What if the most important conversation in human history isn't with aliens, but with an intelligence that's been swimming beside us for 50 million years? This week, Google released something quietly revolutionary. Not a new phone, not a search feature, an AI designed to decode dolphin language. They call it DolphinGemma. And what it's already finding is forcing scientists to ask a question we've avoided for 60 years. What would dolphins actually say to us? Here's what makes this weird. We've been studying dolphins since the 1960s, 60 years. And in all that time, we couldn't even generate the sounds dolphins prefer to use when responding to researchers. Our computers literally couldn't make those sounds. DolphinGemma can, first try. But let's back up, because to understand why this matters, you need to understand something unsettling about dolphin brains. They're bigger than ours. Not relatively bigger, actually bigger. A bottlenose dolphin's brain weighs about 1,600 grams. Yours weighs about 1,400. Now, brain size alone doesn't mean intelligence. Elephants have bigger brains than both of us. What matters is something called encephalization quotient. It measures brain size relative to body size. Humans score around 7.4 to 7.8. Highest of any animal. Dolphins, 4 to 5.3. Second place. Above chimpanzees, above elephants, above everything else we've ever measured. And it gets stranger. In 2001, researchers Diana Rice and Lori Marino ran the mirror test on dolphins. You know the test. You put a mark on an animal, show them a mirror, see if they try to inspect the mark. If they do, they recognize themselves. They have self-awareness. Dolphins passed, first non-primates in history to do it. But here's the part that doesn't get talked about. In 2018, researchers discovered dolphins show self-recognition earlier than human babies. Before 7 months of age, human infants don't reliably pass until 18 to 24 months. Let me say that differently. A dolphin becomes self-aware faster than you did. So we have an animal with a brain larger than ours that becomes self-aware before we do, with the second highest encephalization quotient ever measured. And we've been studying their communication for 60 years. What have we found? Well, we know they have names. Each dolphin develops something called a signature whistle in their first year of life. It's unique to them. Other dolphins use it to call them. When researchers play a dolphin's signature whistle, that specific dolphin responds. When they play a stranger's whistle, nothing. In 2013, researchers did something clever. They presented dolphins with both urine samples and signature whistles from the same individuals. The dolphins showed recognition when the urine matched the whistle. They weren't just responding to sounds, they were connecting sounds to specific individuals. Dolphins have names, and they call each other by name. Here's where it gets interesting. Just last year in 2025, researchers identified something new. Not signature whistles, non-signature whistles. Standardized sounds that multiple dolphins share. Think about what that means. Signature whistles are like names, individual, unique, but these new sounds are shared across the population, and they seem to have consistent meanings. One type typically triggers avoidance responses. Researchers think it might function as an alarm call. Another type gets varying responses. It might be a query, a question, something like, "What was that?" After 60 years, we may have just identified the first dolphin words. This is where DolphinGemma comes in. Google built it in collaboration with the Wild Dolphin Project, which has been studying Atlantic spotted dolphins in the Bahamas for over 40 years. It's a 400 million parameter model, which sounds big but is actually small enough to run on a phone. That's intentional. Researchers can take it into the field. Here's how it works. You feed it decades of dolphin recordings. It learns patterns, sequences. What sounds typically follow other sounds. Like how language models predict the next word in a sentence, DolphinGemma predicts the next sound in a dolphin conversation. And it found something researchers couldn't. There's a type of vocalization called VCM type 3. It's how dolphins prefer to respond to human researchers during two-way interaction experiments. For decades, scientists tried to generate these sounds synthetically. They couldn't. The sounds use modified clicks with energy removed from specific frequency bands. Too complex. DolphinGemma generated them naturally. No special programming. It just learned from the data and started producing sounds that dolphins actually use. One researcher's reaction: the stuff that's the hardest stuff for us to do, we finally have a way to actually create. But let's be honest about what this isn't. This is not translation. DolphinGemma finds patterns. It doesn't tell us what they mean. Finding a structure isn't the same as understanding the message. And there's a deeper problem. We don't actually know if dolphins have language. Language, in the technical sense, means something specific. It's not just communication. Every animal communicates. Language means unlimited generative capacity, the ability to combine elements in infinite ways to express infinite concepts, to say things that have never been said. Here's the skeptical view from Cambridge zoologist Arik Kirschenbaum. I think dolphins probably don't have a language in the sense that we have a language. Language is a very complicated and expensive thing to have. It uses up an awful lot of our brain, and it only evolves if it provides some evolutionary benefit. It's not at all clear what evolutionary benefit dolphins would have from language. His point is sharp. Dolphins live in the ocean. They don't build things. They don't have hands. They don't accumulate knowledge across generations the way we do. Why would they need the cognitive overhead of true language? And yet, they pass on cultural knowledge. In Shark Bay, Australia, some dolphin mothers teach their daughters to wear sponges on their noses while hunting. It protects them while probing rough seafloor. This behavior passes from mother to daughter across generations. The first documented material culture in a marine mammal. They remember each other for decades. A dolphin named Bailey was separated from a dolphin named Allie when they were young. 20 years and 6 months later, researchers played Allie's signature whistle. Bailey still responded, longest social memory ever recorded in a non-human animal. They grieve. Dolphins have been observed carrying dead calves for days. An orca once carried her dead calf for 17 days, traveling over 1,000 miles. They have spindle cells in their brains, the same structures linked to empathy and grief in humans. Previously, we thought only humans and great apes had them. So what would they say? Let's speculate. Based on what we know about their behavior, their concerns, their social structure, if we could understand them tomorrow, what would we hear? Probably a lot about fish, where they are, who found them. Warnings. There's evidence that one of those newly discovered non-signature whistles functions as an alarm call. Social negotiation. Male dolphins form alliances that last their entire lives. They coordinate. They have favorites and enemies. They remember slights for 20 years, maybe complaints about us, about the noise our boats make, about the nets, about the sonar. Researcher Denise Hersing, who spent 40 years studying these animals, asks a simpler question. What would it be like to really understand the mind of another intelligent species on the planet? Here's the uncomfortable possibility. Maybe they've been trying to tell us things for decades, and we just couldn't hear them. Researchers have noticed dolphins adjusting their frequencies as if testing human hearing ranges. They produce sounds up to 150 kilohertz. We can only hear up to about 20. They might be speaking to us constantly in frequencies we're deaf to. The history of human attempts at dolphin communication is not inspiring. In the 1960s, neuroscientist John Lilly got funding from NASA. The logic was simple. If we can communicate with another intelligent species on Earth, it might prepare us for contact with extraterrestrials. He set up an experiment where a young researcher named Margaret Howe-Lovat lived with a dolphin named Peter 24 hours a day for 10 weeks in a half-flooded house. The goal was to teach Peter human speech. Peter actually tried. He produced approximations of words: ball, Margaret. Dolphins don't have the vocal apparatus for human speech, but he attempted it anyway. Then funding was cut. Peter was moved to a smaller, darker facility in Miami. Dolphins are conscious breathers. They have to choose to take each breath. Peter stopped breathing. Many interpret this as the first documented case of suicide by a non-human animal, from grief. Louis Herman took a different approach in the 70s and 80s. Instead of teaching dolphins to speak, he tested whether they could understand human-created language. He taught dolphins named Phoenix and Akeakamai artificial languages using gestures and computer sounds. A vocabulary of over 50 words, objects, actions, modifiers. The results were remarkable. Dolphins could understand novel sentences they'd never heard before. They understood that word order matters. Ball fetch hoop means something different than hoop fetch ball. This proved cognitive capability for language, but it didn't prove dolphins naturally use language this way. So here we are, 60 years later. We know they have names. We may have found their first words. We've proven they can understand complex syntax when we teach it to them. We know their brains are larger than ours and develop self-awareness faster, and we still can't answer the basic question. What are they thinking? DolphinGemma won't solve this overnight. The researchers are clear about that. This is a tool for pattern recognition, not translation. It helps identify what sounds might be meaningful. The actual meaning still has to be figured out by humans observing behavior, but the model is going open source. Anyone will be able to use it, train it on their own data, ask their own questions. There's something poetic about using AI, a technology we built to understand human language, to finally hear another species. We taught machines to speak so that we could learn to listen. The question isn't really what dolphins will say to us. It's what they've been trying to say all along. For 50 million years, another intelligence has been living on this planet. We shared space. We swam in the same oceans. And we never thought to ask if they had something to tell us. Maybe now we'll finally find out what we've been missing. Or maybe we'll discover they've been talking about fish this whole time. Either answer would be extraordinary.